Drop the weapon now or we'll shoot. What nightmare has invaded this veteran's home? Thomas jumped out of bed, startled, gripping a baseball bat. His eyes were wide open, trying to make sense of the chaos. His wife, terrified, clung tightly to his arm as blinding lights and loaded weapons aimed right at them. Get on the ground now. Before he could react, a hard blow landed on his face. The metallic taste of blood filled his mouth. Pinned to the cold floor, handcuffed, he heard someone yell, "Who's the idiot that just raided Thomas Marsh's house?" Let's dive into this story. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories. Thomas William Marsh was born on a farm in Nebraska. He enlisted in the Marines at 18 and served in Vietnam from 1968 to 1973. He was a platoon sergeant decorated with the Bronze Star and 2 Purple Hearts. He came back home in 1973 carrying visible scars and others no one could see. He met Martha at a church conference in 1975. They got married 6 months later. For 45 years, Thomas worked as a mechanic at the local Ford shop. Hans once trained to carry M16 rifles, learned how to fix engines and transmissions. He retired at 65 with a modest pension and the quiet respect of everyone who knew him. Now at 74, Thomas spends his days tending the small garden behind his house, reading books, and sipping coffee on the porch while watching the neighborhood go by. The neighbors know him as the kind man in the blue house who always waves when you pass. Very few know about his military past. Thomas prefers it that way. He never talks about the nights he still wakes up in a cold sweat, hearing helicopters that aren't really there. He never mentions the times Martha finds him standing on the porch at 3 o'clock in the morning, staring out at a war that ended 50 years ago. To the world, Thomas Marsh is just a quiet retiree who mows his lawn on Saturdays and goes to church on Sundays until this October morning. At 2:07 a.m., Thomas and Martha are sound asleep when the sound of splintering wood jolts them awake. The front door has been kicked in. Police search warrant. Thomas rolls out of bed on instinct. 50 years haven't erased the military training embedded in his muscles. His hands reach for the baseball bat. Martha screams and curls up against the headboard. Tactical lights slice through the darkness of the hallway. Military-style boots shake the floor. Voices shout over each other, barking commands. Suspect in the back room, clearing the kitchen. Movement in the master bedroom. Thomas raises the bat defensively, thinking this could be criminals breaking into his home, and he's going to protect Martha, just like he always has. The bedroom door explodes open. Drop the weapon. Drop it now. 6 men in full tactical gear aim rifles at Thomas. Their faces are covered by ballistic masks. Their eyes shine behind night vision goggles. "Get out of my house!" Thomas yells, gripping the bat with hands that no longer tremble the way they should at 74. "Drop the weapon now or we'll shoot, Thomas." "Please," Martha cries through her tears. "Do what they're asking." But Thomas doesn't drop the bat. Not right away. For a moment that feels like forever, the 74-year-old veteran sees enemies where he should seek protection. The strike comes from the left. The butt of a rifle slams into his temple. Thomas collapses. The bat rolls across the floor. Suspect neutralized. Cold metal cuffs bite into his wrists. The taste of blood fills his mouth. Martha sobs his name. "Thomas Marsh, you are under arrest on suspicion of manufacturing homemade explosives and engaging in terrorist activity. You have the right to remain silent." Captain Marcus Jones, leader of the operation, reads him his rights as Thomas bleeds on the floor of the very room he built with his own hands. The house he built is being torn apart around him. Drawers emptied, furniture overturned, decades of memories scattered across the floor like trash. "You're making a mistake," Thomas murmurs from the ground. "I'm a Marine veteran. I served my country for." "Of course you did." Jones cuts in, dripping with sarcasm. "Every terrorist has a story." Thomas closes his eyes. The pain in his head is sharp, but nothing compared to the humiliation. and the sound of Martha crying. "I need to make a call," Thomas says through clenched teeth. "You'll get one call when we reach the station." "No. Call Robert Holloway." Jones stops mid-stride. The name hits something in him, a shift in expression. "How do you know Colonel Holloway? He served under my command in Vietnam. He was just a lieutenant back then. I saved his life in 1971. Jones looks at Thomas again, this time with new doubt. Holloway is a legend in the National Guard. A decorated war hero, if this old man really knows him. But why would a war hero be building bombs? In his house. Make the call. Jones orders one of his men. Thomas closes his eyes again. Holloway will understand. Holloway always understood. As he waits, Thomas hears his home being torn apart. He hears Martha being questioned in the living room. He hears neighbors gathering outside, whispering about the quiet man who lived among them. 50 years after returning from war, Thomas Marsh discovered something. Some battlefields never really stay behind. Sometimes they come to you. Could the National Guard's arrival change his fate? The rumble of engines cuts through the cold night air. First one vehicle, then two. Within minutes, an entire National Guard convoy surrounds the block. Military Hummers take positions at each corner. Soldiers in combat uniforms form a perimeter. The quiet suburb of Phoenix now looks like a war zone. Captain Jones frowns as he watches through the window. This wasn't part of the operational plan. "Sir, who authorized the National Guard presence?" one of his men asks. Before Jones can answer, a familiar figure steps out of the lead Hummer. Colonel Robert Holloway, 68, walks with the upright posture of someone who spent his life in uniform. His medals gleam on the chest of his immaculate dress blues. Jones rushes outside to intercept him. "Colonel, this is a federal operation. We didn't request support from." Holloway cuts him off with a look cold enough to freeze fire. "Where is Thomas Marsh?" "Sir, he's our primary suspect." "Captain Jones, I'm going to ask only once. Where is Thomas Marsh?" Jones swallows hard. The authority in Holloway's voice is absolute. Decades of command have turned his words into orders few dare disobey. "He's being held in the master bedroom, sir, awaiting transport." Holloway brushes past Jones as if he's not even there. His footsteps echo down the destroyed hallway. Family photos lie scattered on the floor, trampled. Old furniture is broken. The colonel stops at the bedroom door. Thomas is sitting on the edge of the bed, still handcuffed, dried blood across the left side of his face. Martha sits beside him, holding his free hand. "Tommy." Thomas looks up. For a moment, the decades disappear. He sees the 22-year-old lieutenant who nearly bled to death in his arms near Saigon. "Bobby." Holloway kneels beside the bed, his hand still steady at 68, gently touching Thomas's wounded face. "What did they do to you, brother?" Thomas can't answer. For the first time since the raid began, the tears come. Not from physical pain, but from relief. Someone finally believes him. Jones watches from the doorway, puzzled. "Sir, you know this man?" Holloway turns slowly. His voice carries the weight of 5 decades of military command. "Captain Jones, this man saved my life in 1971. He carried me 3 kilometers through the jungle while I was bleeding from mortar shrapnel. Now I ask you, who was the idiot that decided to raid Thomas Marsh's home?" Jones turns pale. "Sir? Our evidence suggested." "What evidence?" "A cell phone ping. The suspect was using a SIM card registered to this address." "Where's the phone?" Jones hesitates. "We haven't found it yet. We're still searching." "Private Garcia." Holloway bellows down the hall. A young National Guard soldier appears instantly. "Search every inch of this house, every trash can on this street. Find a discarded phone." 20 minutes later, Garcia returns holding a plastic evidence bag. Inside is a smartphone. "Found it in the trash bin out front, sir. SIM card was removed, but the phone still works. Holloway glares at Jones with an expression that could melt steel. Your suspect dumped the phone here. You raided the wrong house. Jones feels the world collapsing around him. You assaulted a United States war veteran in his own home. You terrorized his wife. You destroyed the house he built with his own hands. Holloway turns back to Thomas. Take those cuffs off him now. Jones reluctantly signals to his men. One steps forward and removes the handcuffs. Thomas rubs his bruised wrists. Tommy, you need medical attention. I'm fine, Bobby. I just want this to be over. It will be, I promise. Holloway rises and walks up to Jones. When he speaks, every word is calm and deliberate. Captain, you and your team will leave this house immediately. You will wait in the school parking lot until I sort this out. If I see any of you near this property in the next 30 minutes, I will personally make sure you're investigated by every federal agency I can reach. Jones wants to protest, but one look at Holloway's face changes his mind. Yes, sir. Within 5 minutes, the SWAT team clears out. Thomas and Martha are alone with Holloway for the first time since the nightmare began. Martha finally speaks, her voice trembling. Colonel, thank you for coming. I didn't know what to do. Tommy, tell me everything from the beginning. Thomas does. Every detail, the raid, the blow to his head, the humiliation. Holloway listens in silence. His face grows darker with each word. When Thomas finishes, Holloway pulls out his phone. Mayor, this is Colonel Holloway. We need to talk tonight. An old debt will finally be repaid. Colonel Holloway turns Thomas's wrecked home into an improvised command post. National Guard soldiers move with military precision, documenting every bit of damage, every broken piece of furniture, every shattered photograph. I want a full photographic report, Holloway orders Sergeant Coleman. Every scratch on the wall, every broken item, everything. Meanwhile, a National Guard medic examines Thomas's injury. The gash on his temple runs down to the zygomatic bone and will need stitches. The bruising on his face could take weeks to fully heal. Mr. Marsh, I strongly recommend a CT scan at the hospital. This kind of trauma at your age is serious. I'm fine, Doc, Thomas interrupts. I've taken worse hits. Martha squeezes his hand tightly. Thomas, please at least let the doctor finish the exam. The medic carefully cleans and stitches the wound. He prescribes painkillers and recommends rest. Tommy, Holloway says, the mayor's going to make an official statement in the morning. A public apology. I don't want to be news. Bobby, you already are. Now, let's make sure it's the right kind of news. Holloway walks over to the window. Outside, neighbors still gather in small clusters, whispering and pointing. Some look ashamed. Others just curious. 45 years you lived on this street. 42, Thomas corrects him. And today was the first time your neighbors found out who you really are. Thomas doesn't answer, but Martha speaks for him. He never talked about the war, not even to me in the early years. I only found out about his medals when I was organizing our life insurance documents. Holloway turns. Why didn't you ever tell anyone, Tommy? Thomas takes his time to respond. When he speaks, his voice carries the weight of decades of silence. Because I didn't want to be seen as a victim or as a hero. I just wanted to be a regular citizen. But today, I realize that being regular is an illusion. We are who we are, no matter how many years go by. Holloway's phone rings again. He answers with his usual command tone. Holloway. Yes, they found the real suspect. Where? Good. Arrest him without incident. I want this operation done right this time. He hangs up and turns to Thomas. They got him. Apartment 6 blocks from here. He surrendered without a fight once he realized there was nowhere to run. Martha exhales in relief. So it's over. This part is, Holloway replies. Now comes the hard part. Thomas knows exactly what he means. The unwanted attention, the transformation from private citizen to public symbol. Bobby, I just want my house back. I want my life back. You will, I promise. But both men know some things. Once broken, never quite return to the way they were. Could this veteran's ordeal inspire a new mission? Kevin Mitchell, 28 years old, an unemployed programmer and extremist, sits in his living room watching the news coverage of the terrorist incident 6 blocks from his apartment. He smirks as he watches the footage. TV cameras show Thomas Marsh's house surrounded by police vehicles. Reporters speculate about the radicalized veteran who was allegedly building explosives. Kevin had always planned to dump the phone in front of the old man's house. The perfect target, a perfect distraction. The plan was simple. While the police tore apart an innocent man's life, Kevin would finish preparing the real attack. A federal building downtown during peak hours. But what he didn't expect was the sound of helicopters circling above his apartment that very night. The front door explodes without warning. FBI search warrant. Kevin slowly raises his hands. I surrender. Kevin Mitchell, you are under arrest for terrorist conspiracy, manufacturing explosives, and threatening national security. Inside the apartment, bomb squad specialists find exactly what they expected. Components for homemade explosives, blueprints of federal buildings, and handwritten manifestos outlining planned attacks. Everything they didn't find in Thomas Marsh's home. Dawn breaks over Phoenix, bringing news cameras and reporters to the quiet street where Thomas Marsh spent 42 years of his life. The little blue house that no one noticed yesterday is now the center of national attention. At 8:12 a.m., Mayor Harper delivers a live official statement from her office. Last night, a grave mistake was made by security agencies in our state. Thomas Marsh, a decorated Marine veteran and exemplary citizen, was unjustly assaulted and detained in his own home due to unacceptable operational failures. She pauses, looking straight into the cameras. On behalf of this city, I offer a public apology to Mr. Marsh and his family. He served our country with honor in Vietnam, built a quiet life in our community, and deserved protection, not violence. Thomas watches from his hospital bed, where he finally agreed to stay overnight for observation. Martha sits beside him. Captain Marcus Jones has been removed from duty while a full investigation is conducted. The mayor continues, the officer responsible for the assault on Mr. Marsh is also under disciplinary review and may face criminal charges. Across town, at the police precinct, Jones packs up his personal belongings. 20 years of service, hundreds of successful operations, all overshadowed by one night of cascading failure. Meanwhile, back at Thomas's home, repair crews work with impressive efficiency. The front door has been replaced, stronger than the original. The walls have been repainted. The broken furniture replaced with new but similar pieces. Martha watches as strangers try to rebuild 40 years of life. 2 weeks after the incident, Thomas is sitting on his porch sipping his morning coffee when he notices something unusual. A young man stops in front of the house. He hesitates, then walks up the porch steps. Mr. Marsh, my name is Miguel Fernandez. I served 2 tours in Iraq. Thomas gestures to the empty chair next to him. Coffee? Yes, sir. Thank you. Martha appears with an extra cup as if she knew it would be needed. Miguel sits down and stays quiet for a few minutes. Thomas doesn't press him. He learned long ago that some conversations take time to begin. I heard your story. A lot of vets have. Miguel finally says, and I thought that maybe someone would understand. Understand what? Why it's so hard being back. Pretending everything's normal when you know it's not. Thomas nods. How old are you, son? 29. Been back 3 years. I should be fine by now, right? There's no timeline for this. It took me 50 years, and I'm still figuring it out. How did you make it that long? alone. Thomas looks out toward the garden, where the tomato plants had begun to grow again, despite being trampled. You have to find something to care for, something that needs you to grow. For me, it was Martha. It was this garden. It was the quiet life I built, piece by piece. And if that's not enough, then you ask for help like you're doing right now. Miguel stays for 2 hours. When he leaves, he sets a small piece of paper on the table with his phone number. Can I come back? Anytime you need to, I'll be here. Martha watches from the kitchen window as her husband begins to change. The man who spent decades avoiding his past is now becoming a safe harbor for others carrying the same weight. Maybe this was one more mission after all the others. 3 months after the incident, Thomas is at the grocery store when he sees a familiar figure in the cereal aisle. Marcus Jones, dressed in civilian clothes, is pushing a shopping cart. A far cry from the commanding officer who once stormed into his home. The two men recognize each other at the same time. For a moment, they both freeze. Jones is the first to move. He leaves his cart behind and walks toward Thomas. Mr. Marsh, I need to say something. Thomas waits. I spent 20 years as a police officer. I always believed I was doing the right thing, protecting innocent people. But that night, I became exactly the kind of person I was supposed to protect people from. Jones pauses, struggling to find the words. I hurt you. I hurt your wife. I destroyed your home. And worse, I judged you without knowing you. I saw an old man holding a piece of wood and decided he was a threat. Thomas places a hand gently on Jones's shoulder. Marcus, I spent 50 years carrying guilt and anger over things I did in the war. Split-second decisions that haunted me for decades. If I've learned anything, it's this. Destroying yourself doesn't honor the people you hurt. How can you forgive me? Because forgiveness is the only way to move forward. And because you came here to apologize, that means something. Jones thanked him and shook Thomas's hand with a kind of gratitude that could be felt in the strength of that grip. He promised to change, to be a different kind of officer from that day forward. He understood that redemption, like forgiveness, can't be earned. It can only be accepted and honored through future actions. Thomas Marsh watched Captain Jones walk away down that grocery store aisle. He had long understood that some mistakes, no matter how painful, can become the starting point for something better. This was no longer a time for battles. That time had passed. Now he preferred to spend his days on the porch of his restored home in silence, watching the sun set over. Phoenix with his beloved Martha by his side. If you enjoyed this story, let us know in the comments. We'd love to read and respond to each one. Don't forget to click the like button and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss the next story. Subscribe to Graceful Valor Stories, where quiet strength is celebrated and every hero's story finds a voice.